You ever wake up to the sound of your own engine roaring down the street without you? That was me at 2:17 a.m. I flew out of bed, shirtless, shoeless, heart pounding like I was back in a combat zone. I looked out the front window and saw something that made my brain glitch. My ATV, the one I built from scratch using military surplus parts, was flying down the road. And behind the wheel? A woman with a bleach-blonde helmet of hair and a phone in one hand, Karen. As in HOA Karen. As in the same woman who once threatened to tow my ATV for damaging the aesthetic of the neighborhood. Now she was doing donuts in it. My donuts. And that's when I grinned. Because that $85,000 piece of machinery she thought she'd stolen? It wasn't just an ATV. It was a biometric fortress on wheels, and she had no idea what she'd just locked herself into. I sprinted barefoot to the garage, just to confirm what I already knew. The door was sliced open at the hinge, the keypad was hanging by a wire, and the emergency override, hidden behind a false outlet, was pried open like she used a crowbar. She came prepared. I laughed out loud, not because it was funny, but because Karen really thought she was the main character in this story. She had no clue she was just the warm-up act. I pulled out my phone, punched in the override code, and pulled up the internal cameras. Sure enough, she was fiddling with the screen, confused why nothing was responding to her touch. I clicked another tab and enabled Lock Protocol 77. That meant the doors, windows, and control panel would all freeze unless it recognized an approved face scan. And Karen? She wasn't on the list. Her ride had just become her cell. I didn't call the police. Not yet. Karen had spent the last 6 months trying to find me for everything from excessive tread patterns to vehicle intimidation. Never mind that the HOA didn't even have jurisdiction over my corner lot. She claimed she was on the Extended Safety Committee, whatever that meant. Translation: she thought she was the sheriff, judge, and HOA president rolled into one angry woman with a clipboard and a superiority complex. I knew this theft wasn't random. This was personal. She'd been eyeing my ATV since the day I rolled it out of the garage. Her threats had escalated from passive-aggressive sticky notes to full-on screaming matches about how I was bringing a war vehicle into a peaceful community. I once caught her taking photos of my house and emailing them to an HOA email group she clearly ran herself. This woman was obsessed with the idea of control, and my ATV represented the one thing she couldn't touch. Until now, or so she thought. Back in the living room, I flipped on my main monitor. The GPS tracker lit up like a Christmas tree, showing Karen zipping past the elementary school. She wasn't driving casually, either. She was swerving, honking the massive bullhorn I'd installed for trail warnings, and shouting something out the window at a bewildered cyclist. I activated the external microphones and speakers. Her voice cut through the static. "This is a community rescue vehicle. Move." Rescue vehicle? She was improvising lies mid-theft. That's when I realized this was better than anything on TV. I texted my old buddy Ray, a retired drone specialist and the guy who helped me rig the ATV's facial recognition and lockdown system. I told him, HOA Karen stole the beast. Cameras are live. Let's make popcorn. He replied with 2 words, stream it. We had installed an encrypted feed in the ATV months ago, mostly to monitor for wildlife when I went hunting. I opened the stream, patched in the mic, and made the voice come from the speaker inside the cabin. Unauthorized driver detected. Facial recognition failed. Lockdown in progress. Karen froze, looked around, and shouted at the dashboard. What the? Who said that? The ATV didn't answer. Instead, it locked the steering wheel into a soft drift mode. Just enough control to stay on the road, but not enough to turn off, park, or exit. That was the beauty of the code. It kept the vehicle mobile so it wouldn't be abandoned in public, but it made sure the thief couldn't stop, get out, or do anything useful. Karen had just become the unwilling star of a one-woman parade. I watched her try every button on the dash. Nothing responded. The screen flashed a looping message. Unauthorized operator. Data upload in progress. That message wasn't for her. It was for anyone watching the stream. Ray, meanwhile, had already set up a temporary web page where we could broadcast her face, GPS location, and cabin footage to a growing audience of friends, ex-military guys, and a few very entertained neighbors. Within 20 minutes, we had nearly 200 viewers watching live as Karen screamed at my ATV like it owed her gas money. Karen's joyride took a hilarious turn when she tried to stop for gas. She pulled into a station, climbed over the console trying to open the doors, and then began pounding on the windows, screaming for someone to help her out. A teenage attendant knocked on the glass and she yelled, "Call the authorities! I'm being held hostage by this thing." Unfortunately for her, the ATV's external camera had facial tagging on, so a photo of Karen popped up on the external screen with the words, "Stolen Vehicle Operator," under surveillance, scrolling beneath it. The kid just laughed and pulled out his phone to start recording. Karen panicked, threw the ATV in reverse, and rolled straight over a flower bed. That was when the stream comments exploded. I sat back in my chair, sipped coffee, and watched Karen spiral. She had no idea how much tech was crammed into that machine. It wasn't just the facial scan and voice controls. It had redundant battery backups, blackout-proof data logs, and remote immobilization features designed from old military drone prototype. Basically, she'd stolen a bunker on wheels. And the longer she stayed inside, the more data it collected, her face, her voice, even her fingerprints from touching the console. All admissible, all recorded, and all being uploaded directly to cloud servers already connected to law enforcement portals. But I wasn't done. I flipped on the internal speaker and said, in my best robotic voice, "Ms. Karen, this vehicle is equipped with security measures. Please remain seated until local law enforcement arrive." She jumped so hard she hit her head on the roll cage. "Who's in here? Who's talking?" she shouted. "You're not supposed to." She stopped mid-sentence and stared at the camera. That's when it hit her. She wasn't just being watched. She was being broadcasted. Back at my house, the neighborhood group chat was blowing up. Screenshots, jokes, someone even made a meme in under 10 minutes. Karen's face frozen in shock, under the caption, HOA, Heist of the ATV. I'd never seen my neighbors so united in anything, except, maybe, trying to keep Karen out of their business. One guy even offered to hook up his projector and stream it on his garage door for the whole cul-de-sac to see. Meanwhile, Ray was adding enhancements to the feed. A little speedometer in the corner. A blinking alert whenever Karen screamed. Donation button for the Karen Legal Fund, which redirected to a wildlife charity. Then came the best part. She tried to call someone. Her phone, still inside her purse, triggered the jammer we installed in the ATV's dash. No outgoing calls. No Wi-Fi. Just isolation. She was on her own, surrounded by technology she couldn't begin to understand. She pounded the dashboard, screamed into the void, and finally slumped into the seat, defeated. She didn't even know this was just the first hour. She hadn't even tried to stop yet. That's when things were going to get really entertaining. Because the moment she hit the brakes and brought it to a full stop, the lockdown would intensify. And Karen? She was about to learn what it felt like to steal a ride built by someone who spent 15 years designing unbreachable tech for people way scarier than her. And I wasn't going to stop her. Not yet. Not until the whole town knew what happened when HOA Karen messed with the wrong ATV. Karen's first clue that she wasn't in control anymore came when she tried to pull into the parking lot of a local grocery store. The moment she eased off the accelerator and pressed the brake, the ATV let out a long mechanical chime and instantly locked all systems. The dashboard flickered, the steering froze, and the windows sealed. The display read, "Full lockdown engaged. Operator not recognized." For a full 5 seconds, she sat there blinking, jaw dropped like she couldn't believe a machine had just disobeyed her. She slammed her fists against the dash and screamed at the windshield like it had personally insulted her. People walking by paused and stared at the spectacle. One guy with a shopping cart looked at her, did a double take, and then started filming. That's when the external speaker kicked in. It played my pre-recorded message, calm and corporate sounding. This vehicle has been reported as stolen. All actions are being recorded. Law enforcement is being notified. Please remain seated. Karen's face turned 10 shades of red. Instead of remaining seated, Karen did exactly what I expected. She lost her mind. She began kicking the driver's side door like a temperamental toddler. The ATV didn't budge. I had reinforced those doors with a composite blend of carbon steel and titanium mesh, left over from a defense contract years ago. She was kicking a bunker. But the fun wasn't over yet. As part of the lock protocol, the vehicle was now projecting a silent stream to our newly minted webpage, which by now had over 4,000 viewers. Ray, ever the prankster, added a poll to the stream. How long will Karen last before crying? The top response? Less than 15 minutes. Bets were being placed. Someone even started an online watch party. I hadn't laughed this hard in months. Meanwhile, Karen frantically pulled out her phone and tried to make a call. That's when she realized something else. No signal. The signal jammer embedded in the center console was doing its job perfectly. Her eyes darted around the interior like she'd just woken up in a sci-fi thriller. She shouted again at no one, her voice muffled through the sealed glass. She tried to crawl into the back seat, but the ATV was a two-seater. There was no back seat. Just a sealed cargo unit containing survival gear and tools I kept stored for off-grid trip. She tried to pry open the glove compartment, but even that was locked. I watched as she pounded on every inch of the interior in pure, escalating desperation. That's when she made the mistake of rolling into the middle of a local charity parade. The ATV had been coasting down the street, and without full control, she had no choice but to go where it rolled. Unfortunately for Karen, that meant directly into the tail end of a 4th of July prep parade hosted by the nearby high school. Kids with flags, floats shaped like fireworks, a marching band blasting patriotic tunes. It was a Norman Rockwell painting in motion. And there, right between the cheerleading squad and the town's antique fire truck, was my military-grade ATV with Karen sealed inside like a malfunctioning display model at a robotics convention. People started clapping. They thought it was part of the act. Karen looked around, confused. Parents waved. A kid tossed a mini flag onto the hood. The ATV, now at a full stop, began broadcasting a secondary message across the external display screen. Celebrating freedom, tracking stolen vehicle live. It alternated between that and a looping clip of Karen breaking into my garage from the previous night's footage. Her face was there, clear as day, bolt cutters in hand. Ray had edited it into a loop with comedic timing. Every time she looked left, the video repeated her stepping into the garage with that stupid grin. The crowd began murmuring. Someone finally recognized her. One of the parents yelled, "Isn't that Karen from the HOA?" A ripple of laughter followed. Karen tried to sink lower into the seat, but the ATV's interior wasn't exactly roomy. The more she moved, the more obvious it became. At this point, she wasn't just being recorded by my cameras. Half the parade crowd had phones out too. Live streams popped up on social media within minutes. The hashtags #HOA Karen and #ATVJail started trending locally. I watched one clip go viral in real time, Karen screaming, "Let me out!" while the marching band behind her blasted Stars and Stripes Forever like her meltdown was part of the performance. While the world watched, Karen made another attempt at escape. She grabbed her purse, tried to find something heavy, and pulled out what looked like a can of hairspray. I watched her point it at the center screen like she thought she could threaten the vehicle into compliance. Nothing happened. She screamed again and threw the can, which bounced off the bulletproof dash and landed in her lap. A woman in the crowd shouted, "Maybe read the manual, Karen." That set off a new round of laughter from the sidewalk. Meanwhile, I decided to up the ante. Using the mobile interface, I turned on the cabin audio and played my voice live. Karen, please remain seated. Your location has been shared with local authorities. Your cooperation is appreciated. She jumped and spun around like the voice had come from thin air. You're watching me? She screamed, then leaned into the camera. This is illegal. I have rights. I smiled and leaned into my own mic. You have the right to remain silent. And ride this parade all the way to the police station. Ray was in stitches. He added cartoon clown horns to the overlay and changed the GPS marker icon from an ATV to a circus tent. The police were already aware by this point. I had sent them the original footage, full logs of the biometric access failure, the garage break-in timestamps, and the data collected from the ATV's sensors. Everything Karen had touched was logged. Every door she tried, every command she shouted, it was all part of the record. The officer on call had texted me back with a single thumbs-up emoji and a message that read, "Let her cook." They were on standby, waiting for her to arrive, because thanks to the GPS fence I had set earlier, the ATV was set to roll itself toward the local precinct once the lockdown timer hit 0. Karen was going to deliver herself. But before that happened, something unexpected occurred. A local news crew that had been covering the parade spotted the commotion and ran up to the ATV. The reporter knocked gently on the window and asked, "Ma'am, are you okay? Are you part of this display?" Karen went feral. She began mouthing things furiously through the glass, waving her arms like she was directing traffic in a hurricane. The reporter nodded slowly and turned back to the camera. Well, it appears there's some sort of performance art taking place here. Possibly involving HOA reform. That was the headline that made the 6 p.m. news. Back home, I was still watching every second, eating chips, and taking screen recordings. I knew that by the time she got to the station, there would be enough footage to make a 3-part documentary. Ray was already cutting clips into highlight reels. We had one labeled Karen vs. The Voice, another called ATV Does Parade Tour, and the crowd favorite, This Isn't a Rescue Vehicle Lady. Meanwhile, donations on the stream had passed $2,000. Ray redirected them to a charity for veterans dealing with legal harassment. Karen's HOA had tried to shut down a vet-run business last year, so it felt poetic. By the time the ATV turned itself onto the road that led to the police precinct, Karen had stopped shouting. She was slumped in the seat, arms crossed, lips pursed in furious silence. But her image was still playing on loop around the neighborhood, in text messages, and on social feed. I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the intermission. Because once she stepped out of that ATV, she'd have a lot more than embarrassment waiting for her. She'd have a file folder full of evidence, a neighborhood full of witnesses, and a whole internet that already made up its mind. Karen had finally gotten the attention she so desperately craved, and it was about to hit her like a locked door to the face. The moment Karen stepped out of the ATV, she tried to act like the victim. She stumbled toward the police station entrance, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline and yelling, "I was trapped! I was kidnapped! This maniac locked me in." The officers behind the desk looked up, unimpressed, then glanced out the window at the military-grade vehicle still parked on the curb with its cabin lights flashing a calm blue. The lead officer stood, walked slowly outside, and examined the ATV like he'd just found a tank parked at the bus stop. Karen was still shouting, demanding immediate assistance, until the officer calmly held up his hand and said, "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to lower your voice, and then explain why you're in a vehicle that was reported stolen." Karen's face dropped like a busted balloon. She tried to pivot immediately. "It's a misunderstanding," she said, voice suddenly syrupy. "That man owes me a fine. I was just collecting community property. That ATV is a nuisance." The officer looked at her like she'd just tried to sell him oceanfront property in the desert. He pointed at the onboard cameras still recording from the dashboard, then tapped his radio. "Dispatch, can you confirm we received the digital evidence package from the Ridgewood residence about 25 minutes ago?" A voice crackled back, confirmed. Subject identified as Karen Ellsworth. Evidence of forced entry, property theft, tampering with biometric systems, and multiple access violations. Video, audio, and geolocation all logged. The officer looked back at her. "Ma'am, you're going to need to come inside." Karen didn't even try to argue. She clutched her purse tighter and followed him in with that fast, fake smile she always wore at HOA meetings when someone questioned her authority. She had no clue she was walking into a digital paper trail that made Watergate look disorganized. Back at my place, I towed the ATV back using my backup rig. Took me all of 15 minutes to get it home and into the garage, and as I walked around it inspecting the frame, I noticed something that made me pause. Karen had dropped something under the seat, a small binder, water-warped from her panicked antics. Inside it was a laminated document with the HOA letterhead, though I knew that wasn't exactly official. And on the first page, printed in bold, Neighborhood Vehicle Regulation and Seizure Policy. My jaw actually dropped. She wasn't acting alone. This was a plan. A printed, itemized plan to confiscate what she labeled threat-level vehicles from residents with a list of candidates she'd compiled. I wasn't even the only one. One of my neighbors had his dune buggy circled in red ink with the note, "Brings in too much dust." Another had a truck labeled, "Too loud after dusk." Karen had cooked up her own rogue agency within the HOA, and this ATV stunt was supposed to be her shining debut. Stuffed in the back of the binder was a plastic badge. It read Ridgewood Community Enforcement Unit, Acting Director. I laughed so hard I nearly fell onto the bumper. She had printed herself a badge like this was a middle school play. I flipped through the rest of the binder. There were maps of the neighborhood, notes on which residents disrespected authority, and even a section titled Probation-Worthy Households. It was psychotic. She'd turned a neighborhood into her own personal game of SimCity. And she'd tried to use my property as her flagship mission. I took photos of every page and sent them to the local news outlet that had already picked up the viral stream earlier that morning. Within 2 hours, the story was published under the headline, HOA Karen tries to impound combat vehicle using self-appointed authority. The neighborhood went nuclear. Residents began flooding the HOA email inbox with screenshots, questions, and straight-up demands for Karen's resignation. A few even shared stories I hadn't heard before. One elderly couple claimed Karen once fined them for having too many rose bushes. Another neighbor said she'd threatened to report his teenage son's skateboard ramp as a weapons platform. But the wildest one? A single dad said Karen once removed his holiday decorations in the middle of the night and left a note that read, "Not community approved." She had been on a power trip for years, and now the whole system she'd built on fear and fake citations was crumbling. At the police station, Karen tried to double down on her excuse. She insisted I had invited her into the garage because leaving the keypad exposed is the same as permission. The officer didn't even blink. He pulled up the footage of her forcing the panel open with a screwdriver and said, "Is this your definition of an invitation?" Karen tried again, now crying. It was a misunderstanding. I was trying to prevent a hazard. That vehicle scared children. The officer leaned back in his chair. "Well, if that's true, then I'm sure the court will love to hear about how you trespassed, tampered with federal-grade security, and live-streamed your own parade of criminal intent." He slid the evidence folder across the table. Karen stared at the photos inside like they were printed nightmares. My garage. The bolt cutters. Her face frozen mid-scream on the ATV. Every frame was a nail in the coffin of her HOA empire. When the police contacted the official HOA president, a retired teacher named Marlene, she was appalled. Marlene hadn't authorized any of it. She didn't even know Karen had printed those bogus citations. Turns out, Karen had been calling impromptu meetings, forging minutes, and sending fake HOA updates through her own private mailing list, which looked official but had zero oversight. Marlene immediately issued a statement disavowing Karen's actions and confirmed she'd be suspended from all committee duties pending legal review. But the damage was done. The residents had seen the parade. They'd seen the binder. And they were ready to burn the entire Karen regime to the ground. I returned the ATV to its bay and began reviewing the interior logs. Everything was intact. Karen had slammed it around a bit, but the shocks had taken the abuse without much complaint. I ran a diagnostic, patched the voice system, and added a new feature. Whenever someone without facial clearance tries to start the engine, the screen now plays a video of Karen's meltdown, ending with the words, "You are not authorized to operate this vehicle. Please contact a therapist." I didn't think I'd need it again, but it felt appropriate. A few days later, I received an email from a local legal group offering support in pressing charges. They had seen the viral video, read the evidence I'd shared with the press, and offered to take the case pro bono. Karen wasn't just facing petty charges anymore. With all the tech logs, the unauthorized data tampering, and the impersonation of a regulatory officer, she was now on the radar for identity fraud and cyber intrusion, both of which carried real consequences. I accepted their help. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about ensuring no one else in the neighborhood would have to go through what I did. Karen had made a mess out of the entire community. Now she'd have to clean it up in court. As for the rest of the neighborhood, something funny happened. We started talking more. People I'd barely waved to were now stopping by to thank me, laugh about the ATV parade, or share their own Karen horror stories. A few even offered to help build new features on the vehicle as a neighborhood security project. One guy donated a drone camera. Another offered solar panels. Someone even suggested I give the ATV a new paint job to celebrate its unexpected role in public service. I agreed, and within a week, the community pooled together to wrap it in digital camo with a giant sticker across the back. Neighborhood Watch Commander. Karen, meanwhile, hadn't been seen publicly since her police interview. Word was, she'd hired a lawyer and was trying to claim mental duress. But even her legal team couldn't stop what was coming. The evidence was airtight. The community was united. And her reputation, once feared, was now a punchline on neighborhood group chats. I even heard a local bar had named a cocktail after her. They called it the Karen Lockdown. Served in a steel mug with no way out. The morning after Karen's meltdown parade, I was sipping coffee in my garage with the ATV's cabin monitor playing highlights from the viral livestream on loop when I heard the mailbox clang. I walked out to find a manila envelope jammed halfway inside, no stamp, just a red, urgent notice sticker slapped across the front. Inside was a letter signed in Karen's dramatic cursive, demanding a formal retraction of slander, property abuse, and targeted harassment. She called the events a campaign of psychological torment and warned that if I didn't cease and desist all mention of her, she would pursue civil action. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. It was classic Karen, caught red-handed, caught on camera, and somehow still trying to flip the script like she was the wronged party. But what she didn't realize was that this was no longer about HOA drama or stolen joyride. She'd poked a bear that knew exactly how to respond, methodically, legally, and with precision. I took the letter to my lawyer, who nearly choked laughing at the wording. "This is so vague it might as well be a tweet," he said, flipping through the printout of her fake badge, screenshots from the stream, and the binder she'd left behind in the ATV. But as we spoke, something clicked in my head. Karen wasn't stopping because she didn't feel defeated. She still believed she had some kind of authority. If she wasn't going to back off voluntarily, I had to dismantle that illusion permanently, and I knew just how to do it. The next HOA meeting was only a few days away, and according to the official board roster, Karen had been suspended but not yet removed. That meant the perfect setting was already arranged. A room full of her neighbors, a projector, and the chance to showcase just how deep her delusions went. I spent the next 2 days preparing. Ray helped me splice the footage into a highlight real-time down to the second. The edits included her garage break-in, her yelling at the in-dash camera, her flailing during the parade, and of course, her interactions with the police station staff. But we added one more touch. A pop-up counter on the side of the screen labeled "Delusions of Authority," tallying every time she falsely claimed to be in charge. The final number? 14. 14 times she used phrases like, "This is official," "I'm authorized," or "I'm conducting HOA enforcement." Each one more absurd than the last. The soundtrack was a soft circus theme, subtle but impossible to miss. The night of the meeting, I walked in with a flash drive, a folder, and a calm smile. Karen was there, sitting stiffly near the front, surrounded by a few remaining allies. But even they looked uneasy, like passengers on a sinking ship still pretending the water wasn't rising. Marlene, the actual HOA president, greeted me with a nod and gestured toward the projector. "Whenever you're ready," she said. "Let's clear the air." And that's exactly what we did. I plugged in the drive and pressed play. The room was silent for the first 2 minutes. Then came the first laugh. Then a louder one. When the parade footage started and Karen was shown waving her arms wildly in a rolling lockdown, someone in the back outright wheezed. Karen tried to speak up twice but was shushed both times. One man whispered, "Let it finish." When the video ended, I handed Marlene a printed packet of timestamps, evidence logs, and the binder content. "For the record," I said. Karen stood, her hands shaking, and tried to defend herself. "It was performance art," she said. "I was protesting unsafe machinery in our streets." The room erupted into a confused mix of groans and laughter. Someone shouted, "Is that why you forged a badge?" Another yelled, "Was the parade part of your art show too?" Marlene slammed the gavel down and addressed the room. "Based on this evidence, Karen is hereby removed from all HOA functions indefinitely. The Ridgewood Board has no ties to her decisions, past or present, and will be issuing a community-wide apology." Karen stormed out, face red, clutching her bag like it might explode. Her allies? Not a single one followed. I thought it might end there, but Karen didn't let up. That week, I started receiving petty complaints from the city inspector's office. My trash bins were reportedly too close to the road. My dog was unlicensed. A drone had allegedly flown over her property. I connected the dots immediately. Karen had started filing bogus reports under different aliases. I gathered the notices and sent them all to my lawyer, who then traced their submission back to a single email registered under the name Karen Justice One. She wasn't even trying to hide it well. My lawyer filed for a cease and desist order, and it was granted the next morning. But I didn't just want the legal win, I wanted poetic satisfaction. So I upgraded the ATV. Ray helped me integrate a new patrol mode that activated at sunset. It was programmed to take a slow, scenic route around the neighborhood, particularly down Karen Street. The moment it entered her block, it would play soft classical music from the external speakers, Beethoven's Ode to Joy, a peaceful reminder that her power was gone. The ATV didn't stop. It didn't film. It just rolled by, twice a day, like a ghost reminding her of everything she'd lost. Neighbors started waving when it passed. Kids pointed at it like it was a celebrity. Someone even hung a little flag that read, "Long live the commander." Karen snapped. I knew it when I saw the security alert flash on my phone one night around midnight. The ATV's proximity sensors triggered, and the external camera showed Karen in a hoodie and sunglasses, sneaking up the driveway with something in her hand. I zoomed in. It was a screwdriver. She crouched near the bumper, tried to pry open a panel, and in doing so triggered the new emergency lockdown, a special upgrade Ray and I had added just in case she got bold again. The ATV locked immediately, lights flashing bright, speakers activating with a custom line. Unauthorized access detected. Security breach logged. Local law enforcement notified. Karen froze, then tried to run, but not before the driveway camera got a perfect shot of her face. The police showed up 10 minutes later, caught her walking 2 blocks away, and charged her with attempted tampering and violating the cease and desist. The next morning, my inbox lit up with messages from the neighborhood. Someone had already posted the latest security footage. The caption read, "Karen tries again. Fails again." The comments section was brutal. One person joked, "If she wants to be a mechanic so bad, maybe she should start with a tricycle." Another offered to buy her a Lego set to practice on. The incident officially made Karen a legend, but not in the way she hoped. Every parent used her as a cautionary tale. Don't be a Karen, they told their kids. Especially around tech. Then came the lawsuit. With all the documentation, recorded footage, community testimonials, and police reports, my legal team filed a civil case against Karen for property damage, harassment, and false impersonation. But the real cherry on top was when Ray discovered that the surveillance footage Karen tried to erase from the first night had synced to his backup cloud server. That meant we had everything. Every moment. Every frame. Including audio of her bragging on the phone that she knew how to bypass cheap garage locks, and that they'd thank her later when the ATV was gone. When we played that in front of the magistrate, the judge chuckled and said, "Well, that's not going to help you." Karen's attorney didn't even try to argue. The settlement hit her hard. Fines, fees, mandatory community service, and a legally binding agreement that she could no longer hold any leadership role in any HOA for 10 years. The news spread quickly. Even outside our town, HOA boards began circulating the footage as a training video. She was infamous now, and not in the way her clipboard dreams had imagined. The same woman who once tried to police everyone else was now being cited as an example of unchecked entitlement. I walked out of the courtroom feeling light, like I'd just finished a marathon and the finish line was paved in pure justice. The neighborhood felt different after that. Lighter. Happier. The board started focusing on real issues again. Neighbors brought out lawn chairs in the evenings, kids rode their bikes in peace, and the ATV, now affectionately nicknamed the Enforcer, became a symbol of resilience. Karen? She put her house up for sale within a month. No one waved goodbye. No one cared. Because the truth was, her story had already ended the moment she mistook my ATV for a toy. The neighborhood didn't just move on from Karen, it celebrated her downfall like a national holiday. The very next HOA meeting after her court-mandated removal turned into something resembling a block party. The air felt different, lighter, like someone had finally cracked open a window after years of suffocating under Karen's manufactured authority. Marlene, now fully back in charge, opened the meeting with a joke that had everyone in stitches. "Just for the record," she said, "we've confirmed that our HOA does not have a secret police force, a detention policy, or an ATV seizure program." Even the most passive members laughed, some clapping, some shaking their heads like they still couldn't believe it all actually happened. A motion passed unanimously to permanently ban any single person from holding more than one position in the HOA, and another proposal was floated to start a community tech council. Guess who they unanimously nominated as honorary chair? I didn't want the spotlight, but they insisted. After everything, the neighborhood wanted me to be part of the solution going forward, not just the guy with the world's most secure ATV. They gave me a ceremonial title, Community Technology and Safety Advisor. Mostly symbolic, but it came with a free coffee card from the local cafe and the permission to attend board meetings whenever I wanted. It was their way of saying thanks for standing up when most people stayed quiet. The respect wasn't what I set out for, but it sure felt good. Then came the parade. No, not the one Karen accidentally entered like a malfunctioning float. This one was real. The town had its annual Freedom Day celebration coming up, and the planning committee, still high off the viral fame of the ATV incident, asked if my vehicle could lead the parade. "We figured it's already been in one," the organizer said with a laugh. "Might as well make it official." I agreed, and Ray got to work decking out the ATV with flags, streamers, and a full exterior wrap in red, white, and blue. The new phrase across the tailgate read, "Unauthorized use will be hilariously punished." The kids in the neighborhood helped paint mini signs to attach to the side. Karen Free Zone, Neighborhood Watch Commander, and Do Not Disturb unless you like lawsuits. The parade was a hit. I sat in the driver's seat, waving like royalty, with a few kids in the back holding signs and throwing candy. People cheered, some saluted, and a local band even played a remix of the circus theme that had once accompanied Karen's livestream. But the best moment came at the very end of the parade route. As the ATV rolled past the last crowd section, I looked over to the corner where Karen's house used to be the command center of her self-appointed kingdom. Now it sat dark, windows shuttered, and a giant for sale sign staked into the lawn like a white flag. A few eggs had been tossed at the sign. No one seemed in a rush to clean it up. Karen hadn't been seen in weeks. After the settlement and the community service sentence, she kept a low profile. Word was she tried to join a different HOA in the next county over, but they'd already seen the footage and turned her down immediately. Her name had become shorthand for neighborhood drama. Don't go full Karen, people joked when someone overreacted. Some genius even set up a parody account on social media pretending to be her, tweeting things like "spotted a bird feeder," calling Homeland Security, and "neighbors talking too loud, thinking of building a wall." It was brutal, but also hilarious. She'd wanted control and visibility. Now she had both, but for all the wrong reasons. One final twist came unexpectedly. A startup security firm reached out to me after watching the entire saga unfold. They specialized in biometric home and vehicle tech and wanted to license parts of my ATV's facial recognition and lockdown system. They were impressed not just by the functionality, but by the way I had used it to de-escalate a real-world situation without ever laying a finger on the thief. They offered a small licensing deal to integrate some of the features into their next-gen secure transport prototype. I accepted. Not because I needed the money, but because the idea of Karen's tantrum indirectly leading to something that improved security systems nationwide? That was poetic justice. After that, life slowly returned to normal, or whatever counted as normal after your vehicle goes viral for trapping a suburban tyrant. I used part of the licensing money to upgrade the ATV's battery and install an AI assistant that could respond in different voices. Ray programmed one mode called Karen Protocol, where the vehicle answered unauthorized commands with phrases like, "Nice try, but I'm smarter than you," and "No, you may not override me, Karen." It became a running joke, but also a community favorite. At neighborhood events, people would line up just to hear the ATV roast them in that passive-aggressive tone we all recognized a little too well. One Saturday afternoon, I was doing a systems check when a neighbor I didn't know too well came by with his daughter. She was maybe 8 or 9, holding a toy drone in one hand and a juice pouch in the other. He asked if she could look inside the ATV. I opened the door and helped her climb in. She asked a million questions. What does this button do? How fast can it go? Why did the lady scream so much? Her dad laughed awkwardly, but I just smiled and told her, sometimes people think they can take what doesn't belong to them. But this machine doesn't let bad people win. She nodded like that made perfect sense. Before leaving, she patted the dash and said, "Good job, robot car." That stuck with me. Later that night, I took the ATV for one last ride around the block. No cameras, no circus music, just a quiet loop under the streetlights. As I passed each house, I noticed little things that hadn't been there before. Kids riding scooters, porch lights glowing warmly, parents talking by the curb, and no Karen shouting from behind a clipboard. The neighborhood had changed. It wasn't just safer. It was freer. Not because of the ATV or the cameras or even the lawsuit, but because people had seen what happened when someone stood up against petty tyranny and refused to be bullied into silence. I parked the ATV in the garage, powered it down, and stood for a long moment in the doorway, just looking at it. This thing had started as a fun project, a hobby born from boredom and an overactive engineering brain. I never imagined it would end up as the center of a viral saga, a courtroom exhibit, and a parade leader. But most of all, I never thought it would help dismantle a system of fear and replace it with laughter, community, and something real. I shut the door, turned off the lights, and walked back inside, finally ready to rest. Karen was gone. Her era was over. And the ATV? It was right where it belonged, ready, quiet, and watching.